The SEC is affected by social law as much as everything else, but the community in general seems to not think much about the problems with the average commentator they go after, as shown by their own commentaries on them. As these journals no longer around, my example would be the second best example, placing Larvesta. The commentator that I've been covering is his video on video game reviewer Brayden, and another slash of commentator, Ephrommentator, one of the good ones in my opinion, who made a negative review of Super Mario World and a commentator on said review respectively. Let's get driving, shall we? What's the point of that episode number counter if it's always going to reset? Is there a harder of the episode number every time, man?
Disclaimer, I only place the link in the description so people can see the original source material. Do not go to anybody I cover to harass or attack them or you will be in big trouble. Also, to the subject of my videos, I only make these commentaries for the sake of criticism and entertainment. I do not wish to start any drama or be destructive with you in my video, and I apologize if I come out that way.
You can check all video scripts to avoid being destructive and avoid other problems as it is.
You ever had that video that's just lying around in your material folder for who knows how long, lose interest in wanting to cover it, only to rewatch the video and suddenly feel the urge to cover it spring back to life? In case you couldn't tell, yeah, that's pretty much the story behind this video's existence. So, for context, a game reviewer named Brayden did a negative review of the game Super Mario World, and a longtime commentator called the Ephrommentator decided
Am I the only one that feels that countdowns only does out of place in the commentary? As much as it makes you look very egotistical, as it comes you up as a mighty force, he might be just a moron, as we'll see later.
making it very difficult to follow along with where the original video Ephromm is arguing against. Like, I'm not going to say the structure of criticism is innately bunk. I know plenty of reviewers criticize works around various points of contention instead of just going from point A to point B. However, with how Ephromm is going to randomly leap from part to part of Brayden's video, it makes it a lot harder to verify what Brayden is saying and where to anyone who hasn't already seen the original video. With that in mind, my video will feature timestamps in the 0th degree whenever it crops up, so that anyone who wants to see it will better understand what's going on and where.
Super on network. This will allow me not to summon 4 of my boss monsters. Good game.
Speaking of Mario Advance, he brings it up near the end of the video and just makes this absolutely strange statement. This score is pretty much an enhanced score. There's no drastic change from the original.
First, Brayden uses Super NES, which were only applied for the non-Japanese versions of the console, since the NES part came from the American version of the Famicom in the first place. Second, how exactly would you know that if you don't know the full information about this?
So I know it's not a hardware issue. So it can't be a hardware issue because it's been 5 years since the release of the original.
Verify what Brayden is saying and where to anyone who hasn't already seen the original video. With that in mind, my video will feature timestamps in the 0th degree whenever it crops up, so that anyone who wants to see it will better understand what's going on and where.
Super on network. This will allow me not to summon 4 of my boss monsters. Good game.
It never said North is being further, so don't bother with that, Larvesta.
The fact that Mario and Luigi's sprites have been nearly identical to one another for half a decade, and that by the time Super Mario World had come out, you expected their sprites to diverge from one another more than just having slightly different colors, especially with the game being on more powerful hardware. That said, Brayden, I have to ask why you didn't go with Mario 2 USA to compare Mario and Luigi's sprites to. With Mario 1, the most you're providing is that Mario World is stagnating somewhat in the graphical department. Had you went with Mario 2 USA, you'd be giving at least the SNES version less ground to stand on with Mario and Luigi's sprites, given that, as Ephromm pointed out, the former game gave the brothers more distinct sprites from one another, while game being a Doki pedigree skin itself be Hoover damned. In other words, Mario World not giving Luigi's sprites to differentiate from his brother would look even worse, since the game from the previous console generation was able to do that just fine.
A status screen, a cutscene if you collect all the dragon coins, an easier time getting Yoshis that aren't green, audio clips of Mario and Luigi's voices, you know, minor stuff like that.
Firstly, Ephromm had done this type of structure before, like it is on an invalid commentary. Second, no game review has actually done such a structure in a viewer-friendly way. The form is very violently, but not to the wild point of doing something like that. So, they come to think of it, why didn't you put the timestamps of the first act of Ephromm's video played? You'd be more consistent with showing the viewers where and stuff.
Does nothing but hurt your argument by lowering the standards of what the Super NES is capable of.
Yeah, he looks like a depressed lizard.
How does he look depressed exactly? He has a cartoonishly large smile and eyes which communicate that he's happy to be on this adventure. Everything about him seems incredibly upbeat, if anything. Fuck, you even call him excited immediately after this.
Come on, he's a bit too droopy. Or a bit too excited.
I think Brayden was referring to the lowered eyelids with that depressed part, as if Yoshi was only reluctantly smiling or putting on a happy facade in that drawing. Especially considering what Brayden brings up immediately before and after about Yoshi being more of a tool to use, this could give off the impression of Yoshi having an invisible "I really wish I weren't here right now" button plastered onto his chest.
But basically, Yoshi is a safe nerd. He can jump on pretty much any enemy and kill them instantly. If not, he can jump on dangerous surfaces, and that would normally hurt Mario and stand on them. Eat anything you can pick up, either store it or just swallow. Yeah, he looks like a depressed lizard. Come on, he's a bit too droopy. Or a bit too excited. And then eating multiple fruits gives you a power-up. And B, a jump pad. Yeah, this was the most brutal method, but it does save you from losing a life in the game.
As for droopy and excited, I don't think he means what you think he means. But I'll leave that for someone else to explain.
The overall gameplay is fine. The controls are tight, which I like. The difficulty is up there, though. And I think this was a hardware thing rather than a developer thing. The enemies spawn right where you're going 90% of the time, and it doesn't help that there's a bit of popping in this game.
So I'll ignore the obviousness of saying the enemies are spawning where you're trying to go because, well, yeah, they're trying to stop you from getting where you're trying to go. Spawning in front of you, in between where you are and that final destination seems like a pretty...
Firstly, Brayden mentioned half the things Ephromm mentioned, which weakens the latter's point. Second, that fact about ROKI is updated. Miyamoto has confirmed that the main game was meant to be Mario from the beginning.
In other words, Mario World not giving Luigi sprites to differentiate from his brother would look even worse, since a game from the previous console generation was able to do that just fine.
First, like I said before, Brayden mentioned half of those things too, making Ephromm's points just as weak and redundant. Second, this is the flaw with Insipred for now, much like people said in the comments. Too much of this video is agreeing with Ephromm. Maybe you wonder why he made a full content on this. Given the points you do have in Larvesta, make it quicker or something. God damn.
demo where they won't play this game in general, not buy the game. But they didn't have to buy the game, they just needed to buy the Super Nintendo, and the game was included. This point doesn't make any fucking sense.
Also, yeah, nobody's going to want to buy a game like Super Mario World, hence why it sold 20 million copies in the United States.
That is not at all what Brayden said. He was saying that people don't want to buy games that are unfairly difficult in general. Adding on to this, since you're going to bring up Lost Levels as an example of a game notorious for its difficulty,
First, I don't like it in general much. You sound loud and brazen that it's obnoxious. You try too hard to be energetic and lively. Calm it down a little. Second, 2D and pseudo 3D are not the same thing. The latter technically uses texture. The former, well, you know.
Yeah, he looks like a depressed lizard.
How does he look depressed exactly? He has a cartoonishly large smile and eyes which communicate that he's happy to be on this adventure. Everything about him seems incredibly upbeat, if anything. Fuck, you even call him excited immediately after this.
Come on, he's a bit too droopy. Or a bit too excited.
I think Brayden was referring to the lowered eyelids with that depressed part, as if Yoshi was only reluctantly smiling or putting on a happy facade in that drawing. Especially considering what Brayden brings up immediately.
First, Brayden, Larvesta, this is irrelevant. None of these things are required for Yoshi use in a game. Yoshi's not even required to beat the game. Second, well, can't explain it yourself. Shows quite a bit that I can't even say each leopard. Except according to the game's manual, the bullet points and such are about attempting to stop Mario, with meaning they technically are relevant from a narrative standpoint.
And then multiple frames gives you a power. And B, a jump pad. Yeah, this was an method, but it does save you from losing life in the game. So which was worse, getting hit with the Super Nintendo, being controlled by the Super Nintendo on how difficult Super Mario World is, and then an item box where you save an item inside for emergencies. And then 7 good points, yeah, these are really annoying. Alright, Mario Party 2. The good points return from Super Mario Bros. 3, which they haven't gotten any better. Either from the order Iggy, Morton, Lenny, Lemmick, Roy, Wendy, and Larry. And these battles are fine, yet it's so strict and tiny, or they're just not cooperating in general. This is what it looks like when the good points are cooperating. And then when they don't. Not too poor.
Okay, you're gonna have to forgive me for playing so much of the video at once, but there's quite a bit to unpack here. The biggest problem shown in this segment? The video clips you showed do a poor job corroborating your complaints. Your first clip talking about how Yoshi can stand directly on dangerous platforms just shows him being chased away by a Wiggler, while the clips of you fighting the Koopalings don't show how the fights are RNG heavy, instead show you just being poor at fighting them. Speaking of the Koopalings, how about we talk about that JPEG you showed? Really, Brayden? Why couldn't you have just found a version of the image that doesn't just have a jarring white background behind it? You do show in other parts of your video that you are able to overlay images over a background, so to have this random 2010 era low-quality JPEG slapped over a black wall of nothingness comes off as incredibly jarring compared to what editing you do show off in the...
First, an explanation not being much is not really an explanation. This is the second problem with lots of commentators. Thinking that explaining something is explaining enough, even though they don't get enough information to decide that. Second, immediate self-contradiction. Another common SCC problem, in this case you, Larvesta, deciding to adjust it in reflecting on information wrapped after, making it look even stupider than before.
The after is taken so out of context that one can easily assume you're just sucking at the game over having any actually bad design of that part.
Now, of course, to cheer us up, Yoshi is here. Base Yoshi can do what I explained earlier. Eat, be a safeguard, stand on surfaces that would normally hurt Mario. The game still goes by the same rules that's been in place since the first Mario game.
What was the point of repeating what Yoshi does? You already explained how he's controlled earlier in the video. I'm sure your audience would remember that much at least. If you wanted to lump his controls in with the rest of the game's controls and structure, you could have just gotten rid of the first Yoshi segment and saved it for this part.
During the 90s, Nintendo felt like they were in decline. They kinda were, but Nintendo tried to be cool with all the teens, that's right. They made the Play Aloud series.
Talking about a game that was bundled with the Super Nintendo. Meaning, Nintendo didn't have to keep renters in mind, because if you had an SNES, you were essentially guaranteed to have a copy of Super Mario World.
Except not every Super NES system came with Super Mario World. There's plenty of other games that the SNES was bundled with, and for all Nintendo knew, some people may have bought one of those instead, and thus initially missed out on Super Mario World. Doing a bit of digging, A Link to the Past and Donkey Kong Country were just two examples I found in North America alone.
And that's not even the only time remembering the game was sold with the system makes a point fall apart. Take this line, for example. Yes, I understand that you need a game that isn't too easy for people to fly, yet you don't want this game to be too difficult where they won't play this game in general and not buy the game. But they didn't have to buy the game, they just needed to buy the Super Nintendo, and the game was included. This point doesn't make any fucking sense.
Also, yeah, nobody's going to want to buy a game like Super Mario World. Hence why it sold 20 million copies in the United States.
That is not at all what Brayden said. He was
Nintendo will know. He said this like what game this and not console Insipred. Also, why just America?
talking about how Yoshi works to complaining about how difficult the game's challenges can be without any sort of obvious transition being a pretty big example of what I'm talking about.
Oh, and there's also this little part from the same section of the video.
It could have been the fact that every video game company had to keep the video game renters in mind.
He says, talking about a game that was bundled with the Super Nintendo. Meaning, Nintendo didn't have to keep renters in mind, because if you had an SNES, you were essentially guaranteed to have a copy of Super Mario World.
Except not every Super NES system came with Super Mario World. There's plenty of other games that the SNES was bundled with, and for all Nintendo knew, some people may have bought one of those instead, and thus initially missed out on Super Mario World. Doing a bit of digging, A Link to the Past and Donkey Kong Country were just two examples I found in North America alone.
And that's not even the only time remembering the game was sold with the system makes a point fall apart. Take this line, for example. Yes, I understand that you need a game that isn't too easy for people to fly, yet you don't want this game to be too difficult where they won't play this game in general and not buy the game. But they didn't have to buy the game, they just needed to buy the Super Nintendo, and the game was included. This point doesn't make any fucking sense.
Also, yeah, nobody's going to want to buy a game like Super Mario World. Hence why it sold 20 million copies in the United States.
That is not at all what Brayden said. He was saying that people don't want to buy games that are unfairly difficult in general. Adding on to this, since you're going to bring up Lost Levels as an example of a game notorious for its difficulty, that game only sold 2.5 million copies in Japan, on top of initially being denied an international localization due to its cheap difficulty, ultimately lending credence to Brayden's claim.
Some difficult games sell well anyway, partly due to that difficulty, including Lost Levels in Japan.
With that, I'm just about done with Ephromm's video. His last few points are alright, and his final thoughts are just one big nothing burger. That said, I'm not done with this chain overall, as there's still some parts of Brayden's video that I would like to hit on my own. So with that out of the way, it's time for some last minute cleanup. That sounded better on paper, I swear.
Anybody want to go through torture? Super Mario World was released on the Super Nintendo as a launch title in 1990.
We don't know that Larvesta. Even the possible ones, even the one where Brayden will want to Mario World to simply be longer, we have no evidence for, so why even bother?
With that, I'm just about done with Ephromm's video. His last few points are alright, and his final thoughts are just one big nothing burger. That said, I'm not done with this chain overall, as there's still some parts of Brayden's video that I would like to hit on my own. So with that out of the way, it's time for some last minute cleanup. That sounded better on paper, I swear.
They wanted refined to make it sound less unintentionally suggestive.
Anybody want to go through torture? Super Mario World was released on the Super Nintendo as a launch title in 1990. Then it was in the Super Mario Advance series in 2001 for Japan, and all other regions got the game in 2002. So why does other regions get the game almost a half a year later?
I don't know, translating?
Yeah, Mario does talk a lot in this game, doesn't he?
Honestly, yeah, I could see translation being part of the reason for the international release being delayed. Like, I get that the part about Mario being a chatterbox is meant to be sarcasm. Even with the voice clips thrown into the Game Boy Advance version, Mario is pretty well known for being a silent protagonist.
The irony is, those voice clips play constantly in this version of the games, making Mario indeed quite the chatterbox in those games, if only because he won't shut up.
However, as was shown in Ephromm's video, the game does have story cutscenes with text that would need to be translated from Japanese to English and other languages, not to mention other smaller stuff like menus and level titles.
But it won't take that long to translate in from Japanese to English, since there's not that much text in the game to begin with.
See the small ball on the tall wall, see it fall in a hall.
How funny is generally subjective now, Larvesta. Unless of course you can prove it's objectively funny, which you don't, so...
See the small ball on the tall wall, see it fall in a hall, see it crawl, give it all a call. Hey y'all, see it's called where's Shaw, yeah!
Basically, Yoshi is a safeguard. You can jump on pretty much any enemy kill them instantly. You can jump from computer services and that would ruin the Mario stand on. You can anything you can kill, either destroy or just follow. Yeah, he looks like a depressed lizard. Come on, he's a bit too droopy. Or a bit too excited. And then eating multiple fruits gives you a power. And be a jump pad. Yeah, this was the most brutal method, but it does save you from losing life again. So which one's worse? Getting hit with the Super Nintendo, we covered by the Super Nintendo on how difficult Super Mario World is. And then the item box where you save and item inside for emergencies. And then the Sand Gooplings. Yeah, these were really annoying. Or Mario Party 2. The Gooplings return from Super Mario Bros. 3, which they haven't gotten any better. Either from the order Iggy, Morton, Rennie, Lemmy, Roy, Wendy, and Larry. And the battles are fine, yet it's so strict and tiny. Or they're just not cooperating in general. This is what it looks like when the Gooplings are cooperating. And then when they don't. Not until 4.
Okay, you're gonna have to forgive me for playing so much of the video at once, but there's quite a bit to unpack here. The biggest problem shown in this segment? The video clips you showed do a poor job corroborating your complaints. Your first clip talking about how Yoshi can stand directly on dangerous platforms just shows him being chased away by a Wiggler, while the clips of you fighting the Koopalings don't show how the fights are RNG heavy, instead show you just being poor at fighting them. Speaking of the Koopalings, how about we talk about that JPEG you showed? Really, Brayden? Why couldn't you just found a version of the image that doesn't just have a jarring white background behind it? You do show in other parts of your video that you are able to overlay images over a background, so to have this random 2010 era low quality JPEG slapped over a black void of nothingness comes off as incredibly jarring compared to what editing you do show off in the rest of your video.
First, the third common problem with ST members. They're very heavy in reliance on cliches that they try to hide with nonsensical unimaginative shit. It's a lot to unpack here, what they do with the poor job of showing. As country they speak better version of why, among others are used in this section alone. Second, you said it was jarring twice. Which is why I covered it earlier, am I right?
See the small ball on the tall wall, see it fall in a hall, see it crawl, give it all and call. Hey y'all, see it's tall, where's Shaw, oh yeah!
Now, of course, to cheer us up, Yoshi is here. Base Yoshi can do what I explained earlier. Eat, be a safeguard, stand on surfaces that would normally hurt Mario. The game still goes by the same rules that's been in place since the first Mario game.
What was the point of repeating what Yoshi does? You already explained how he's controlled earlier in the video. I'm sure.
Because if I brought it up, why did you repeat it here? Second, the Sonic Frontiers clip was an example of games people, at least according to Brayden, think have this new problem when it comes to games.
See the small ball on the tall wall.
Annie says hello.
See the small ball on the tall wall, see it fall in a hall, see it crawl, give its all and call, hey y'all, see its tall, wear a shawl, oh yeah!
During the 90s, Nintendo felt like they were in decline. They kinda were, but Nintendo tried to be cool with all the teens. That's right. They made the Play Aloud series. This was the thing.
This game talk started earlier. Why put all the Yoshi talk here instead of that earlier part of this video?
During the 90s, Nintendo felt like they were in decline. They kinda were, but Nintendo tried to be cool with all the teens. That's right. They made the Play Aloud series. This was the thing Nintendo was trying to bank on to win back an audience. I don't know if it worked or not. The only thing I know is that spring 90s and early 2000s, they dipped their toes in other things too, like the Best Play Here, Who Are You? And the one I consider to be a part of this too is the more recent, of the 3DS era, There's No Play Like It. I kinda like the 3DS one. I remember this one more at Christmas time though, but I think it was also everywhere else too.
And this relates to Super Mario World. How? Like, yeah, the little titles of the Super World were named after slang terms from the 90s, but why bring up stuff like Who Are You and There's No Play Like It? It feels distracting.
If the first thing you mentioned was related, why wouldn't the entire saga for Brayden be relevant then? Also, Brayden in the 2000s slang stuff is irrelevant in the 90s.
As for Brayden, I'll be honest, I couldn't be bothered to sit through your entire video initially. Your attitude is obnoxious and unfunny, and your humor and dialogue is more irritating than entertaining. When you're not throwing around non-sequitur clips that do nothing but distract from the point you're trying to make, your gameplay footage fails to correlate to the examples you're trying to make about Super Mario World's problems. On top of that, even without Ephromm shuffling around your video, the structure into your criticisms is all over the place and doesn't have much in the way of an understandable order. Most notably with you bringing up 3 separate times what Yoshi is supposed to be able to do, instead of just explaining once and leaving it at that.
First, just because Brayden tried to say it doesn't mean it succeeded. Everyone showed multiple ways Brayden did fail there. Second, if it's nonsense, why shouldn't Ephromm criticize it? Third, despite how many times I agree with him, am I right?
If there's one thing I can agree on with Ephromm, it's that watching your video did not get me to change my view on Super Mario World in the slightest. Overall, I would suggest cutting back on the constant bootleg Scott the Wasp cut-in jokes, and grouping your review into chapters going over different aspects of the game, such as gameplay and presentation.
First, wow, why did my cycle down in paragraph review? Only the first 2 words were changed there. Second, Brayden explained it twice, not thrice, don't be dishonest. Third, not even think like the ability to abuse Yoshi? Wow, what happened is a douchebaggery. But wait, the Scott tells the comments? That's what you said, I don't know what Scott was. Appeared 7 times, why comment only on them now? You had the opportunity by at least the 3rd time, and you blew it. Give it a typical SEC greet out from Larvesta and him hoping in between the hate helped them, barely. Larvesta, this video was shit and you're a typical SEC idiot. You had the things that, well, 90% of the community had. A boatload of cliches, simple-mindedness, fallacies, dishonesty, misinterpretations, and a grand deal of stupidity. Some idiots are redeemable, but they never will be unless you just listen to people outside the community more and ask people like Campbell and all to come with you to help improve more significantly. Please, for fuck's sake, actually take your points to be honest with the videos and your audience and calm down a little. And you actually sound like the intellectual you want to be so badly. Anyway, until next time, if ever.